I've read a lot of comics in my time, nowhere near the level of the average Marvel or DC obsessed fanboy, but I have read enough to know when I'm reading something special, as I tend to just read the stuff that I'm interested in. Calvin and Hobbes, Phantom Road, Reaper, obviously. Although in the pursuit of trying to read more of them, it's inevitable that you'll run into some just absolute dross. Fucking hell, some of this shit is just straight ass. Ultra Mega. What happened? In fact, let's not even get into that before I start crying, as this video isn't about that. It's about Robert Kirkman. Yeah, it's not about that. It's about Robert Kirkman. I'm quite the fan of good old Kirkman. He's made some good stuff, some bad stuff, some really, really bad stuff, but all in all makes some fairly reliable products. The Walking Dead and Invincible being his most notable. A couple of months ago, I had watched a video detailing his early life and career, but what really caught my interest was a reference to a specific comic. Though before we get into that, it seems there's a collection of obscure and sometimes unfinished Robert Kirkman comics. Sleepwalker, Hardcore, Space Ace, Capes, because yes, I don't care what anyone says, Capes is an unfinished comic that desperately deserves a conclusion. Cloudfall, that is genuinely, honest to God, a really good read. Like, really good. Like, I'm tempted to just make this video about Cloudfall. But alas, we must keep our eyes on the prize. Spoilers ahead. The first issue follows Daniel, a man of God. Literally, he's a priest working for the church. Although in the first panel is shown to be a man who indulges in not so godly activities, one could say. He meets up with his brother, Kurt, and we learn of their not so stable relationship. Daniel being a priest, the two have their usual talk in the church's confession booth. During their conversation, Kurt opens up about his grievances, and we get a flashback to a few days ago, detailing his occupation as an agent for an obscure branch of the government. To cut a long story short, he's sent on a mission to secure a high-value target, a scientist and his research. While the two are escaping, Kurt learns of the man's experiments, using live human hosts as guinea pigs, causing them to develop uncontrollable growth. Horrified by this revelation, Kurt kills the scientist and escapes the facility with the test subjects. Clearly, this whole ordeal has put some heavy weight on his shoulders, these meetings in the confession booth acting as some form of therapy for the guy. Obviously, Daniel doesn't care, being as cold as possible to him, as if he's more of a nuisance rather than his own flesh and blood, leaving Kurt to wander on home alone. And maybe it's just me, but I think Kurt's probably gonna need more of those confession booth sessions.
You are a worthless, bitch-ass nigga.
Because the next time we see him, he's been captured and tortured. Oh! That does not look good.
Like why is you wilding? You gotta rock like this. Ah! Give me another pull stick.
Go, man. But you wilding out, man.
Why I'm wilding out?
You supposed to be my man.
I am your man.
Yo, come on, man. Please, man. Yo.
And I'm gonna prove it, motherfucker.
I'm sorry, man.
He's being tortured for information on where the whereabouts of the fabled research, as he had left them behind when he was helping those test subjects escape. The dialogue fully selling the importance of the research, if this is what they're willing to do to get their hands on it. Kurt doesn't spill and we cut to his funeral, where his death is taking a toll on Daniel. At least that's what he thinks. Hallucinating him, having full-on conversations with the guy, almost as if he could reach out and touch him. But their conversation consists of Kurt telling Daniel to protect his wife, that now that he's no longer alive to protect her, she'll most definitely be a target to the people who did this to him. So Daniel goes to Kurt's apartment, seemingly out of guilt, but going there nonetheless. Amanda and Daniel, that's her name by the way, Amanda, the two talk for a while and he agrees to stay, reluctantly keeping his promise to Kurt that he stay and protect her. When later that night, two men in suits searching for Amanda break into her apartment. The two gunmen shoot at Daniel when Kurt instinctively jumps in harm's way. Being a ghost is kind of, counterproductive, but does end up changing him, almost as if it's fusing the two together, turning him into Haunt.
He said it! He said it!
The two gunmen, bewildered by the figure in front of them, unload fire again, but it is for nothing as using their new form. The two are dispatched of rather easily. Issue 2 follows directly after the first, with Haunt immediately jumping into action, killing the last 2 gunmen perched outside. Assessing the situation, the 2 call up an operative to come clean up all this mess. The guy makes it to their apartment, but doesn't seem too thrilled to be called by someone who shouldn't know to call him, demanding to know how he got his number. Daniel responds by saying he knew who to call because of his brother, a response that calms him down, and the unknown man says he can get this all cleaned up. The next morning shows an Amanda in shock at the sight of Daniel smoking, clearly showing her disdain for that activity. Some dialogue is exchanged between the two, lines hinting at a more intimate relationship, but nothing can come of this as Amanda has to go to work, and the two go their separate ways to the dislike of Kurt, pleading with Daniel to stay with Amanda. But his plea falls on deaf ears as Daniel heads back to the church, apologizing to Father Pearson for his tardiness, only to find him dead, murdered by an unknown assailant. Daniel in shock, grasping at his Jesus piece, barely able to compose himself when a figure emerges from the shadows. Another agent clearly looking for the research. He lunges forward at Daniel, causing him to transform into Haunt. Why did I say that so aggressively? Causing him to transform into Haunt. And we learn the name of the attacker, Cobra. Oh God. He shows himself to be a good fighter, giving the duo a good run for their money. But the fight is cut short with Cobra getting cold feet and dips out of there via jumping out of a window. Daniel wants nothing to do with this and just wants everything to go back to normal. He gets taken to Kurt's employers under a crack house. A bunch of military personnel surround him, and after failing to follow instructions is taken into custody. He wakes up in a holding cell with the same mutated He wakes up in a holding cell with the same mutated experiments from issue 1, most likely being held here for further study to find a way to reverse engineer the doctor's research, since Kurt killed him and the research disappeared. But before we move on, we do get a massive exposition dump from this random woman, and to avoid lulling you to sleep reading all this bullshit, I'll try to summarize this as quick and as concise as I possibly can. But to simplify all this, essentially the reason Daniel and Kurt confused together to become Haunt is because of something to do with Kurt's supposed unfinished business being kept in a pseudo-purgatory, essentially floating in limbo, unable to move on to the afterlife, as he's stuck, bound to his blood relative, Daniel. Again, it's just fucking bullshit. I'm sorry. I'm not even sure it makes sense, honestly. Let's just move on. We cut to the next scene where Daniel is being interrogated for an explanation on what even were the past 2 days. To cut a long story short, he explains himself. It doesn't go too well and is sent back to his holding cell. The woman from last time offers Daniel some head, but is simply just too tired to accept and is caught falling asleep, where he's then drugged and expected to meet the same fate as his brother by the same people that tortured him to death. He ends up fighting off Bill Cosby, proving part of Daniel's story, but one remains unconvinced until he is told by Kurt to repeat 2 words. Saying them out loud brings the interrogator to tears, that we now know as Beth. Putting 2 and 2 together, Daniel learns of his brother's infidelity, breaking Daniel, as we learn as he was in love with Amanda, them having a deep relationship until Kurt came along and cucked him. With this display of sorrow, it's enough to convince the onlookers from the double-sided glass. We then get introduced to Rhodes, the woman who ordered Kurt's death, working as a double agent against Kurt's employers. She's on the phone with this guy, her boss, who's also desperately looking for the research. And with that ends issue 4. Issue 5 opens up on what we'll call for now the director, giving Daniel an explanation on what even is the nature of the research. Essentially, and hold your jaw for this one, but essentially is the key to immortality. I know. Don't all shout at once. Let's just speed this up. Amanda, while at work, gets kidnapped by Rhodes' people. Daniel manages to save her, but she has no clue who he is or even what he is. No time for that though, as Cobra attacks, catching Daniel off guard, as given what Daniel had done to even get here, he's quite exhausted. Haunt can barely hang on and is close to turning back into his human state, while Cobra is relentless in his onslaught and layering on constant pressure, putting Haunt on the back foot. Cobra is on the verge of winning when... I would like to interject with my quick thoughts here, in that given what Cobra's character will do later in the story in regards to his arc, this genuinely hurts to see. Like, I feel pain right now, like chest tightening, heart clamping type of pain. This is some devious, diabolical shit right here. Back at HQ, where Daniel is still recovering from his fight with Cobra, they explain to him what his condition is, what Haunt is, and to put it simply, is essentially what the black suit is to Peter Parker, draining Daniel the longer he's exposed to it. They ask again on the whereabouts of the briefcase, and again Daniel repeats that he doesn't know, and with that concludes issue 4. And before we move on, I just have to interject again. I know.
Why do I hear boos?
But I do think it should be known that one of the hardest things any piece of media can do is keep my attention. This isn't to say my specific enjoyment of something is the be-all and end-all of said thing, but back in 2023, when I was reading more comics, one thing I'd always run into was reading a comic, it being really good for like, what, the first 3-4 issues, good setup, characters, writing, decent looking visuals, and I have no idea what it is. But come issue 5, 6, cooked. The quality just falls off a cliff. Ultra Mega, Phantom Road, Tech Jacket. My god, what they did to Tech Jacket. I would put Cloudfall on this list, but that shit got clapped off the census before even making it past the first issue. But the point is that a lot, and I mean a lot, of comics don't make it past the 4th issue before turning to dust. This isn't to say that Haunt follows the same trend. No. That comes later, dear viewer. But reading issue 5, I'd be lying if I didn't say it didn't get worse. Issue 5 shows Daniel being more ingrained in the agency, slowly becoming more involved in events rather than being an unwitting actor, taking out and bringing in high value targets, being the first one on the scene in an emergency. And here is why I think this is a problem, in that a lot of stories suffer from this universal conundrum, that being scope creep. And for those who are unaware of this term, I'll explain it to you using my own personal definition, but it is the act of having a fairly modest idea, and I will be focusing on the effects that it can have on a story, but really you can apply this to anything. But to continue, it's having a fairly modest idea, but then all of a sudden rapidly expanding upon it to the point where the basic foundations are unrecognizable. I guess the most recent example I could give of a case of scope creep would be something like Tech Jacket, a comic I was dreading having to read, but upon doing so was incredibly surprised. A solid premise of aliens finding a way to survive against all odds, against a foe hell-bent on the extermination of their entire race. This story truly beginning when the main character, Zack, happens to stumble upon the Tech Jacket, a device crafted by an alien race, one powerful enough to defend themselves, but regardless of their efforts are still slain, on the edge of oblivion, in a desolate extraterrestrial environment, fearing the diabolical, bestial hatred that would rage against their civilization. If their technology were to fall into the wrong hands, the untold destruction that would come in their wake would be unpalpable, only for it to be stumbled upon and inherited by a child, who would then go on to save their entire species. It was such a good, simple story, and maybe it's just me, but the whole boy finding item and then going on to do great things with said item.
You can fly!
Is up there with the chosen one trope, is one of the many reasons I like Ben 10. The Omnitrix will go down as one of the greatest weapons in all of fiction, but the point I'm trying to make is that these 2 issues are the best of the Tech Jacket series. Classic hero saves the girl, world, and in turn the entire universe, and is implied to go on to do great things type of ending. An ending that is still open-ended enough to warrant a continuation, and continue it did. Continued into absolute shit. It could not be described, the untold suffering and torment I had to endure in order to finish reading this tragic, truly tragic piece of dross. I won't harp on this for too long, because this video isn't about Tech Jacket, but again, these 2 stories are a perfect example of scope creep, starting from humble beginnings, only for it to devolve into unrecognizable sludge. It's not enough to tell you what happens in this story. You genuinely have to suffer through it to understand how bad it gets. Like if you go to read comics on, your local comic shop, where I definitely bought this, and I'm only using this site for the sake of research purposes. I promise. If you scroll down to the comments of the later issues, all you'll see is just comment after comment from people completely bewildered by what the hell they're even reading. I tried. I genuinely did try to support this claim with evidence, but upon revisiting Read Comics Online to record myself reading the comments of Tech Jacket's later issues, it was to my surprise to see that every single last comment was completely gone. I did do a little bit of research to understand what happened to discuss the software/platform used to host these comments, but unfortunately I just couldn't find anything. But I swear upon my life and everything that is good, that just like myself, the comments were indeed bemused by the complete and utter nonsense that became of the later issues of Tech Jacket. But that's enough of that. Back to the video. And this is what I mean by scope creep, a simple concept held together by these things I put on screen, spun out into some incoherent nonsense. But again, this video isn't about Tech Jacket, it's about Haunt. Unluckily for Haunt, its problems don't stop here, it only gets worse. Kurt and Daniel get sent on a sting to acquire the lost research, being sold by this woman, Mirage, to this guy, Hug, the man who orchestrated Kurt's torture and eventual death. Hug needing the research to exact his plan, but we're not there yet. we must wait. Formalities are said and the deal has been done when our guys spring into action, attempting to make an arrest, but are wiped out fairly easily by oppressing forces. Horn pursues Herg holding the research, only being halted by Kurt, urging him to save Mirage, who Daniel will soon know to be another woman Kurt cheated on Amanda with. Honestly, what is wrong with you? No time to dwell on this now as the bad guys are getting away. So Horn grabs his foot, flipping him over and deflecting bullets into the shoulders of women. Although this violence against females doesn't go unpunished as Herg manages to get away. Horn could have stopped him, but given what we now know about the suit, he was essentially experiencing a 30-year diagnosis of coronary heart disease and subsequently runs out of energy. Back at HQ, Kurt wastes no time laying into Daniel, desperately explaining his further infidelity to deaf ears. Meanwhile, another conversation takes place mere meters away where Morgan is murdered. That was his name, by the way. Morgan, by Rhodes, and an explosion goes off, allowing Rhodes to escape. The last few panels establishing Daniel as a legitimate agent of the government. And with that, closes out issue 5. Beginning issue 6. And let's just address the elephant in the room. What the fuck is this art style? One of the few reasons why I could keep reading comics such as Phantom Road and Ultra Mega, amidst the growing dissatisfaction with its writing and dwindling interest, the one thing that kept me coming back was the art style. Maybe I've just been pampered with comics like Savage Wolverine, the first few issues of The Walking Dead, Reaper, Battle Chasers, works that have gone on to make me somewhat spoiled when it comes to visuals and anything really, and for a good reason. Just look at that one issue from Inhumans with its beautiful illustrations, the character design, the colors, effects. It's mesmerizing, but aren't just there to be eye candy for the sake of being eye candy, but also go to reinforce the aesthetic of the universe. Honestly, just looking at Battle Chasers, you can just see how well an on-screen adaptation would look, taking inspiration from the golden age of Disney films and a pseudo sci-fi mystical blend of IPs like World of Warcraft or Hearthstone to be more fitting. There's something so comforting when a creator just goes above and beyond to create a believable world with visuals to match, and it's the reason that even for all that it is done to entertain, teach, and inspire me, I just cannot bring myself to drudge through the later parts of my beloved Invincible. It should be a crime to have such a transition of art style so abominable as this.
It's abnormal for women to be progressive.
Interesting.
Or liberal, but it's abnormal for a man to be a liberal or progressive. It's a sign of being a beta male.
For a comic that at its worst look like this and at its best look like this, it is a genuine honest to God shame how we will never see the beautiful reuniting of Mark and his family under the art style of our glorious creator, Ryan Oatley, but under the putrid illustrations of this talentless fuck. And history seems to be repeating itself with Haunt, as the comic would have a change in art style, going from the great work of Ryan Oatley to the mad scribbles of Greg Capello. Even his name sucks. And honestly, no hate to the guy, but from the first panel, it's just fucking up. I'm sorry, it's just night and day, isn't it? But we cannot harp on this for too long. The art style doesn't hold up to snuff. Let's see if the writing does. The narrative starts to expand as we learn more about Kurt's second affair. Kurt wanting to run off with Mirage, a plan for the two, her to take the notebook, and him escorting Schillinger out to safety. Obviously, that didn't happen, like, at all. Some boring character stuff happens, and we get taken back to the present. And with that concludes issue 6. Issue 7 starts with Daniel reuniting with Charity, the prostitute from the very beginning of issue 1. He talks about how much he misses her. Fucking. It's niggas like this that set us back like 50 years. His simping doesn't last long though, as her pimp bitch slaps her back inside, causing Captain Saverho to push the pimp and storm his way inside, not wanting to leave his woman in duress. Say the line, guys. He barges in, not knowing this operation runs 12 niggas deep, but given he's Haunt, it's not really much of a problem, is it? We move on to the villains, where they discuss their plans, now that they have the research. Back to Daniel, he sees Amanda again, telling her who Kurt really was, and all his secrets. She's devastated, we don't care. Let's move on. We see Daniel becoming an official member of the team, and the villains progressing fast and reverse engineering the research, following Schillinger's notes. We also finally get an update on Cobra, after his fight with Haunt, having to go under major surgery. Again, I'm really not a fan of this, but again, we must wait. Issue 8, we see Mirage. Oh, cut out this line. Issue 8, we see Mirage in a Urian thong conversing with this guy, the Whisper, about Daniel's induction into the network, and we get a montage of Daniel training in and out of his Haunt form, as to not be so reliant on his transformed state, even shown testing the limitations of his transformation, but that doesn't go too well. We go back to Cobra, who's still in distraught at what's been done to him, and opts to abandon Herg's operation in pursuit of his bloodthirsty revenge against Haunt, but is stopped by the man himself after a confrontation reminding Cobra of his place in all this. Again, I really don't like this, but for now, I'll let it slide. Back at HQ, we follow Daniel getting introduced to two new characters. The first guy isn't important whatsoever, like at all. But Daniel also meets Stephanie, an actual somewhat important character, since she's another potential love interest. They talk it up a bit and we move on to the Situation Room, where new developments have been made. But I do hope this relationship flourishes, grows, and meets a satisfying conclusion. Right? But to tie up issue 8, a team gets sent in and are wiped out. So they send in Horn to neutralize the threat. Blood and guts go flying as Horn tears through the opposition. And we cut to what can only be described as a Hollywood-sanctioned humiliation ritual, where Cobra is completely rolled over and degraded, being described as a hideous abomination by his wife, who then goes on to by what can only be described, at least by modern standards, as legal rape. Again, why? Why have they done this to him?
何にも変わってねえなお前は何にもできねえじゃねえかよ何にも
Whereas elsewhere, Haunting encroaches in on the target. When he's ambushed, he takes care of this, but his time in his Haunt form is coming to an end, but pursues the jet regardless. That looks to be holding what the scientists have been working on for so long. Daniel latches onto the plane, gaining his footing on one of the wings when he's surprise attacked by Cobra. Daniel's Haunt form is basically hanging from a thread when he falls off, presumably plunging to his death. Cobra diving in right after him, capturing Daniel after he had passed out, bringing him back to Hug in issue 10, where he's tortured for an answer on what he even is, given the same answer he gave HQ all the way back in issue 3, receiving the same reaction. They discuss how they'll dispose of Daniel, the scientist among this operation wanting to study him before killing him. Cobra protesting that he should be the one to kill Daniel for what he had done to him. In the other room, Daniel's still being tortured, but not for long, as his brother, after being disconnected from him, the two come together to find a way to escape and take out Hug, Haunt barging him out of a skyscraper window, falling from a height of at least 100 feet, straight into 2 layers of concrete. And I have only one question. We know Haunt can and has survived and pulled off remarkable feats, but how did Hug survive this? Don't get me wrong, the dude's strong, but he's still human. Falling from a height that long surely should have killed him, right? Or whatever. HQ come to pick up Daniel and Hug. They arrive and collect the two, but before the next panel, the shot lingers, and we see a figure hiding in the shadows, before disappearing upon Cobra and Rhodes arriving. It would seem that there are more parties at play than we thought, but before the issue ends, Robert simply hasn't satisfied himself enough in seeing Cobra be systematically torn to pieces, so blesses us with another humiliation ritual, where his smug bitch of a wife somehow manages to belittle him even further. Robert, it's getting a bit excessive. Okay, to round us all out, Daniel's back at HQ. This guy won't shut the fuck up, and Daniel talks to Stephanie, where they agree to move in together. Fucking hell, I'm done. I'm finished. Back to the villains. Rhodes in Hug's absence sets up a deal with what we'll just call the buyers for now. Moving back to Hug, he's been taken into questioning, where he goes in to tell his captors he won't be held in custody for long. As it turns out, all the experiments, although they had the possibility to create eternal life, can also be used to create indestructible super soldiers. I hate to be that guy, and to be clear, this isn't necessarily a bad trope, but when done in stories like this, it's super boring and predictable. From the very first mention of this fabled research and the fighting between factions for it, I knew where this story was going. It just reminds me of that one fat retard from Jurassic World who wanted to turn incredibly dangerous, hyper-aggressive, and hard to control prehistoric creatures into global instruments of war. Over, you know, guns, those incredibly reliable, hyper useful, easy to control instruments of war. Fucking hell, that guy was retarded. But needless to say, Hug escapes, leaving our heroes in the dust and leaving Beth in critical condition. Some romance stuff happens, and the final panel shows Horn ready for battle against Hug and his super soldiers. They discuss how to dispose of fucking motherfucker. This start of issue 12 beginning with Horn stopping the deal between Hug and the buyers. The drones living up to their reputation, not even being slowed down by Horn. Dismemberment and heavy gunfire being the only real effective way of dispatching them. Beyond that, Hug gets captured, Beth recovers from her injuries, and Daniel, Charity, and Stephanie move in together. And with all the complications that come with that. The final panel being a more detailed image of the shadow creature from last time. Issue 13 showing Kurt, Daniel, and another agent Park on a mission surveying a drop. Kurt noticing the shadow creature's eyes, case, but is dismissed by Daniel. They can't bicker for too long as the deal goes tits up, and the duo springs into action, decimating the majority of the assailants, but are incapacitated by a rocket launcher. Being saved by Park, they head back to HQ for briefing, but Kurt is immediately seen worried when fronted by a shadowy figure, just standing there. Panels later consuming him entirely. Daniel is sent on a mission the next day, but can't transform into Haunt. Daniel's team is ambushed by enemy assailants. They're about to be executed when Park takes the initiative, liquidating a large portion of the combatants, but are soon overrun. All seems lost when Kurt returns out of nowhere, looking like he's running from something. They fuse together, revealing to Daniel the shadow creature. They're able to defeat him, but Daniel is scolded by his team for, from their point of view, abandoning them. They finish the mission, but back at HQ, Daniel is seen in a panic, asking for the location of the woman from the third issue, the same woman who clued him into what Haunt even was in the first place. He finds her but is attacked once again by the shadow creature that we now know as an apparition. And to cut a long story short, the apparition is here because it wants to take Kurt, as the only reason Kurt hasn't passed on to the afterlife is because he's linked to Daniel, which allows the two to form Haunt. But regardless, Kurt's existence in this realm is like a glitch, and the apparition is the theological version of Indian tech support. But needless to say, they escape, and the woman leaves to gather the necessary ingredients in order to exercise the apparition. Fucking hell, the script is long. And Herg breaks out of HQ custody, sending HQ into a panic. Later on, Daniel visits Amanda. Emotions are had when the apparition attacks again, this time taking Kurt. The next time we see the two, Daniel is in the hospital due to his last confrontation with the apparition, and Kurt is seen to be in some form of limbo, being spoken to by some form of higher being. Not God per se, but some flavor of omnibenevolent, essentially reinforcing the theory that Kurt can't pass on due to a case of unfinished business, needing to stay on Earth until he completes this very vague task, the apparition wanting to stop Kurt from doing said task, not because it has any stake in the game, but just simply because it's what it does. Again, tech support.
These guys are Indians.
The next panel, we see Cobra stalking Daniel as he gets transferred from the hospital to HQ, telling Herg of his whereabouts. Herg meets up with Cobra ready to close in on HQ when Kurt shows up, returning from his time in limbo, but the two have no time to gather their bearings as the monster has already caught up with them. They fight. The woman comes back, imbuing Haunt with some form of spell or some shit, I don't know. She says she's gonna sacrifice herself to save Haunt. The bitch gets atomized and the apparition is at peace. The last remaining panel showing Cobra on the phone to what seems to be very powerful people, of them getting confirmation of a task. As it's revealed, Cobra has killed Herg, his lifeless corpse being the last thing we see, and so closes out issue 17. It's stuff like this that just, like, don't get me wrong, I am paraphrasing and somewhat skimming through the story, but I don't think it matters at this point, when again the story was so simple. A man down on his luck, losing the love of his life to a man who would go on to betray her, reduced to having to sleep with fucking prostitutes, using his occupation as a glorified discount coupon, living the prime of his life in isolation, the little of his actual free time being spent with the man who sent him down this downward spiral in the first place, unfortunate circumstances bounding the two together, forcing them to work in their best interests. It was a solid premise, ruined by this, whatever this is. Now look at it. Secret government organizations, rivaling factions, uninteresting love triangles, played out villainous plots of world domination via means of acquiring super soldier-like creations, ghosts to beings omnibenevolent in nature, double crosses, and now shadowy, rootless international cliques, like figures pulling the strings with, for fuck's sake. It's like what do you want me to say? What do you actually want me to say? It's too much. It's just too much. This is why I just can't stand the latest series of Ben 10. For all the faults of Omniverse, the biggest mistake they made was having the story be set in stone, with elements of time travel, writing it so that things need to happen, instead of the characters' choices dictating the direction of the narrative. Destiny and fate taking precedent over the timeless concept of a boy finding a watch that turns him into aliens. But no, he's gotta meet George Washington or some shit. Wait, that's actually pretty cool. Regardless, what a damn shame. Moving on to the next issue, it turns out Herg's alive. Oh, so he's alive. He's alive now. And he was just playing dead. So there was virtually no point in any of this, really. For fuck's sake, this story is fucking terrible. He calls on Rhodes to come pick him up. She shows up and guys, guess what? She double crosses him, as if the narrative wasn't complicated enough already. He's not trying to hear all that though, and crashes the car, sending them both careening into a ditch.
No anger. Let's just take this calmly.
Causing a fire, leaving Rhodes for death. I think Maybe. I don't know at this point, honestly. Daniel finally meets Mirage face to face. They talk, nothing special. We move on back to Cobra, chilling in his crib with his fat, glup, shitto slut of a wife. And I'm not even joking when I say that. She's a literal whore. As alongside Cobra being an emasculated, fucked up looking abomination, he's also a cuck. Yes, we are getting tech jacket levels of cuckoldry happening here.
Step back and sing it for the father!
This scene where Cobra's told by his wife how many men she's fucked, literally cooking up octopus, every tentacle representing all the meat she took.
You what?
I'm sure many of you have heard of this term that's used, right? And so in this video we're going to discuss humiliation rituals, okay?
This shit is diabolical. Before his wife can finish talking about how she got gangbanged, Cobra gets a call, informing him of Hug's miraculous recovery, showing the only bit of gusto in this entire comic by telling this fucking slag to pack her shit, they gotta move. Back to Haunt, we learn Allegra, that's her name by the way, Allegra, isn't actually dead. Sure, she was fucking vaporized and reduced to atoms, but hey, maybe she got an extra life or something. The comic ends with Beth talking to someone about teaming up, and it turns out to be Hug. I'm so exhausted, I can't even be asked to put any effort into the script anymore. And there goes issue 18. However, who gives a fuck? I'm done. And this is why the video title is what it is. In that beyond this point in Haunt's story, I have no clue what happens, which is a strange position to be in as a reviewer, I guess, due to how the majority of people who click on reviews like this, regardless of anything else, you expect at the very least for the person reviewing the content, or in this case comic, you'd as a base standard expect them to finish the damn thing. And I'm sorry guys, I just can't do it, because upon opening up issue 19, I'm not even gonna say anything. And if you thought my rant about the art style from a couple minutes ago was boring, then this is gonna feel like you just downed an entire bottle of NyQuil. But at least this will be more than just me complaining about my own personal preferences, as this isn't even about subjectivity when the art is just objectively bad, in my opinion. Obviously, from the cover art to the very first page, the visuals are beyond incoherent. Case in point, this. You can kind of make out what's happening. There's fire, obviously. Piles of mutilated bodies. Clearly a massive conflict took place here. Fair enough, I guess. You can technically make out what's happening here. Now look at this. Look at this and tell me what's happening here. I dare you. I wouldn't even know where you'd begin to decipher the incoherent mess on my screen. I'm assuming this is supposed to be some form of church. This is a coffin, I guess. I would go into the story, although all but the main characters are completely different, and they too did not leave the art style changed unscathed. Terrible line art and fuck ugly redesigns. Just look at what they did to Haunt. Even Charity, man, come on. I do hate to use the views of others as an indication of the quality of a product, but at this point, who cares? But to understand why Haunt ended up in the state that it is, we have to, and I never do this, but I'm essentially forced to at this point, but I did read the long text thingy at the end of all comics. I know, it's shocking, but reading it does give some important insight on what happened to the story behind the scenes. It would seem Haunt proved to be a bit too hard for old Robert to write for, juggling between AMC's The Walking Dead, his big gigs at Marvel, and obviously the GOAT, you know. And you can't blame the guy. Carrying the entirety of comics on your back would take its toll on anyone. But even still, at the cost of Haunt's story, leaving this guy to write the remaining issues of any comic should be classified as a war crime. And those responsible should be subjected to torture in the confines of a North Korean prison facility. But regardless of whatever reason for Robert's departure from the project, it's undeniable the disastrous consequences of that decision. Leaving the project in the way that he did practically ensured his slow, painful death, entering freefall in terms of his narrative direction. The juggling between how many genres, storylines, characters, and arcs for those characters was an impossible task for any writer, even a good one. And it's just sad. The genuine potential this little comic had just wasted the way it was. What they did to Cobra should be a crime. Of all the characters that were effectively pointless, storylines that went nowhere, and concepts that were left on the cutting room floor, Cobra's character has to be the worst offender in all this. Don't get me wrong, the revelation of the nature of Haunt would have been cool if fleshed out, given it's basically a mechanism to keep spirits, ghosts from being involved in things that they shouldn't. Yada yada yada, get the point. But what was interesting about that scene where Kurt was stuck in limbo was that given enough time, Daniel and Kurt could have eventually swapped places. And when I was reading that, I thought the story was going in a completely different direction. The story progressing in the same way it already did, at least for the most part, with a Kurt disenfranchised with his current position, losing the love of his life and revived purpose for living in the most gruesome of ways, having to watch in a subordinate position as Daniel lives out the life he used to have, with the newfound rejuvenation he feels being a part of something bigger than himself. himself, finally finding the love he always wanted in Charity and others. As Kurt watches idly by as Daniel gets to experience the life he so desperately desired and risked everything to attain, and ultimately paid the heaviest price for his troubles. I could easily see a scenario where Kurt tries to take back his life through trying to replace Daniel, overextending their time connected to each other, taking control of Daniel's movements in life or death situations, further degrading their cooperation during missions, weakening Daniel for every second they're together, possibly sending Daniel into a condition where he's defenseless, giving Kurt the opportunity to finally take control after enough time of him contemplating this decision. I don't know, just a thought. This might have been even how the story played out in the later issues. I wouldn't know. I didn't read them. There's also the supernatural element of the story. The relationship between Daniel and his side characters basically amounting to nothing. Though in my opinion, nothing, and I mean nothing, comes close to the systematic annihilation of Cobra. Jesus fucking Christ. One of the reasons why I like Cobra so much as a character was because of how rare he is today. His introduction is that of a guy who doesn't have a real stake in the game. He's just a person doing his job, all his actions non-personable. I like to compare him to Sandman from SS. Later in the show, his character kinda did lean towards his Spider-Man 3 counterpart. Not really in it for the love of the game, and more for the reunification of his family. Although our version of Marco was in it for the money, or in his words, the big score, doing his job as a henchman who worked for Hammerhead, who worked for the big man, who invested in the development of creating supervillains in order to distract Spider-Man, the Sandman being a byproduct of that project, allowing the big man, Tombstone, to cover his legion of petty thugs to operate with impunity, just barely outside of the radar of the Spider-Man. And it worked. He did indeed live up to his purpose. Like the Shocker, he was just good at his job. In fact, they were probably out of the large roster of villains in that show that gave Peter the greatest challenge, Marco getting the better of him in their engagements quite often.
Man, show me what you got. Or better yet, I'll show you!
Wow, you sure showed me.
Now, the hammer thing's getting old, pal.
The Shocker won his first fight with Peter, and he would have died too if it wasn't for his massive plot armor. So rare do we get villains that are actually menacing and have legitimate tangible motives and plans to exact those motives, with henchmen that are actually competent and not completely useless fodder for the protagonist to thrash around for a bit. And there is a bit of that, with Horn getting the upper hand in some of their engagements, but it's never to the extent where Cobra just becomes a pushover, constantly keeping up the fight, even against a foe like Horn, who to him essentially defies all reality. Like, dude fights what can only be described as an eldritch monster on the side of a plane. Like, come on. And it's not that I hate Cobra's maiming, I do, but it wouldn't be nearly as bad if it had actually mounted to anything. But just like everything else in this series, it would go nowhere, for reasons I've already explained. But humor me for a second. Imagine a Cobra and utter distraught at his mutilation, him losing his prestige as a high-level mercenary, his confidence being shattered as his reputation falters with time, bedridden in recovery. All these cascading setbacks sparked by a man who not but 1 day ago was using his social standing as a priest to fuck prostitutes, becoming deeply obsessed with destroying Daniel, a rivalry that would span the entire series, every setback faced only deepening his fanatical vengeful crusade, further sacrificing his personal relationships, with his wife in particular getting annihilated for obvious reasons. The final confrontation resulting in his redemption in either death or reconciling with his loss or something, and moving on. It's probably a bit too far-fetched to expect an Infinity War Thanos type victory where Daniel dies and Cobra gets his vengeance, but anything, and I mean anything, would have been better than this. Again, the maiming of Cobra wasn't the issue. It's almost mandatory that in stories like this, that both the hero and the villain experience setbacks in their aims. The setbacks aren't the issue, it's the fact they never stop. Not for Daniel, as he gets the literal best ending. Even his problems solve themselves. Cobra, on the other hand, wasn't as lucky, not nearly, as when reading a comic we witnessed the atomization of Cobra. Not even his soul is left intact, going from a capable mercenary, respected in his field for his prowess and ability, to a weasel, completely complicit in being a bottom bitch, perfectly okay in knowing that his wife has open and frequent gangbangs behind his back while he's in hospital.
Don't you give up, nah, 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 I won't give up, nah, nah.
It is honest to God baffling to read this. There is this slight trend in media where for no discernible reason, a character will be completely annihilated. I've already spoken on Jurassic World, but one only has to examine one character to see this phenomenon in full effect. Zara Young, their caretaker described to taking care of their nephews, are one of the main characters. Claire Daring. Yeah, no one remembers the characters from this film. All we need to know about her was that she was their babysitter. She literally goes from touring a bunch of kids around, them ditching her, the ungrateful little shit, leaving her to worry for hours on end on the uncertainty of what happened to them, finally being reunited with them just to experience one of the worst fates ever conceived by man. And Cobra is no different, just getting beaten down the entire comic, just issue after issue of continuous L's. And it's not just him, it's actually quite a lot of Kirkman series that have this one particular thing in common: cuckoldry. It's cuckoldry. This is a serious point in this video.
How do you like this?
Whether it be the antagonist getting cucked or the protagonist, this dude loves cuckoldry and pretty frequently integrates it into his stories. And it's really uncomfortable and sad. Case in point, Tech Jacket. It's a doozy. And again, with these examples, I'm not going to go into super high quality, detail. I'll just explain enough to where you can kind of get the picture. But Tech Jacket, I've already explained the story, but in this story, during and after Zack saves the Geldarians, he cozies up to Lynn, the daughter of the monarch of this alien race. They develop a relationship, flirting, puppy love, wholesome moments, the whole 9 yards. All seems well, when out of nowhere, and I mean literally nowhere, it turns out after a brief period of the two being separated, Lynn, during this respite in their relationship, would start shacking up with some
stupid. I misspoke. I was gonna say, you stupid
revolting dyke.
But on reflection, maybe it was a good sign that I stumbled on my words because I wasn't meant to say it.
Well, let's be nice here. But she does fit the stereotype. The panel painting us a horrible image with the two heroines snogging it up while a molding Zack just stands there in shock, in the background completely bemused by this development. Okay, bro, that's not too bad, I guess. Plus, that's just one example, and it wasn't even that heinous. Not nearly as bad as you made it out to be. If every example is as tame as this one, I think someone's looking a bit too much into things. Capes, a less than obscure piece of Robert's work, but still infested with this quirk. There is a less than side plot alongside the main narrative, where the undisputed biggest thought in all of existence, Clairvoyance, who walks up to two of her co-workers, asking them if they'd like to run a train on her. Mind you, while her husband is out of town. And it gets worse. It was bad enough Kirkman would subject our imaginations to the thought to two basically cavemen clubbing this whore's cervix to death. He expands upon this nightmare scenario with Claire's second lucky guy, Captain Cosmic, who she entices with a night of unadulterated bullying. Again, while her husband is still out of town. The next time we see them, they've just finished up, us witnessing the aftermath of their night together. Oh god. You think this is pretty sad, right? For the poor sorry sod who has to dedicate his life to this bitch, not knowing that his wife gets pounded behind his back while he's gone. But before you shed a tear at this scenario, if you have any sympathy for this sorry sack of shit, the next panel will turn your sympathy to complete and utter disgust as her husband comes home, visible shock on the face of Captain Cosmic, as to him the jig is up, it's over. But Claire is calm. Too calm, as if this is supposed to happen. I think you know where this is going. The door creaks open as someone makes their way into the room. I think you know where this is going. The man peers himself through the door, left ajar, and sees his wife in bed with another man. But the man isn't angry. I think you know where this is going. In fact, he's somewhat indifferent, almost pleasantly surprised. Not even angry, just asked them to scooch over so they can all sleep together.
You what?
No!
You will be fucking executed, ISIS style.
And this one kind of stung, given that the husband character is super patriot. That in his comic of the same name is, in comparison to his appearance here, is a fucking Chad. He's a well-renowned veteran of World War II, and I guess all global American conflicts. Has or had 2 kids, and successfully completed his DiCaprio playthrough, and locked down a wife 20 years younger than him, physically, at least. So it's so off to see him in this state, as a cuck stand-in for Kirkman's weirdo fetish. The best explanation for this is that when Capes was written, the universe of Invincible hadn't fully been thought out yet, causing the creation of this undesirable scenario. Okay, that's bad. That's really bad. But that doesn't mean pilot season hardcore. The basic concept of this comic is a body swap type of deal, where a secret CIA government branch has harnessed the ability to take full control of certain people of special interest. Cool concept, decent story, but nearing the end of the first and only issue comes the same quirk so prevalent in all these comics, where a faceless henchman is found to be sleeping around with the boss's wife. And with this one, I am somewhat stretching the definition of this term, as you're not a cuck for getting cheated on, bruh. You just got unlucky. You're a cuck if you get cheated on, are aware of said adultery, and then like that shit, and go as far to encourage it. That's what makes you a cuck, which this example doesn't really meet the criteria of, but still it just reeks of this cuckery. But still, like Stella, just reeks of this cuckery, adultery, taboo, freaky, weirdo shit that's nested itself in all these examples. All these examples? Dude, you've only showed 2. And you know what they say, we'll need at least 3 to suss out a pattern. Stella, pilot season. Yet again, another demonstration for the justification for mandatory castration. I won't pretend as if I have any idea what happens in the story, because I don't, as this comic just wasn't for me. But again, within the first and only issue, do 2 of the first 4 characters we see commit adultery, as the husband character kisses the main character behind his wife's back and gets sent into a comatose state, given our leading lady has what I can only assume to be an offshoot of Rogue's powers from X-Men. But yet again, what else could this be seen as other than adultery? Even Invincible. Never would I have thought that a time would come where a comic during its zenith would have its entire storyline derailed so that the writer could indulge in his weirdo fantasies, where after his main character disappears, only to come back and be brought to tears at the realization that he's missed out on the most precious years of his child's life, but also to come back to his partner, who had in his time away moved on to some glop shito extraterrestrial life form. And again, I'm stretching the term a bit, and this is the personal part. Invincible is a story I'm quite fond of, at least the base story, that is. I don't know every single piece of obscure lore or watch every video analyzing every aspect of it. It's always just had a special place in my heart. And this part of the story was always something of a deep blemish on the narrative that for the most part was fairly consistent and solid, all things considered. So for it to result in some lackluster conclusion where Mark is forced into a humiliation ritual-esque situation, being confronted by his wife's husband as he can barely get a word in, leaving his wife to conclude the engagement, it's so baffling in why the fuck did this have to be written? Alas, another character for Cuckman to superimpose his fixation onto. Mark wasn't the last, and he wasn't the first. Many had to be raped for that to happen. Cobra, you deserve so much better than this.
I've seen it all, man. This girl says she be stealing to you, lying to you. She cheated on you with some dude's uncle. That dude look like a Eugene, bro. You don't take her back.
But to conclude this tale, because holy smokes this video is long, Haunt is a classic case of mismanaged potential, with such a strong beginning, only to devolve into unrecognizable slop, almost purposely disregarding all the aspects that gave it such a good footing, all qualities that would tank beyond recovery upon issue 6, and even worse upon the departure of its creator, leaving it to its unsung fate to fade into irrelevancy, just becoming another one of Kirkman's forgotten projects. Haunt, what a damn shame. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We're dropping bangers every day. You know?
My mama, we lit!
Hey, before you go, I do have a Twitter. Okay, wait. Alright, let's all calm down, alright? Let's all chill. Relax. I swear to all that is holy, I'm not gonna be one of those guys that drops the worst take imaginable.
Ooh, after watching that shit, I'm about to go repent. My nigga, I'm about to go pray.
And in that delusion, convince themselves of being right. I promise I'm not that guy, I swear. Most of the stuff you'll see on there will either be content updates, my thoughts on certain topics and subjects and things of that nature. Jeez, fucking hell. And second channel video announcements. Speaking of second channel, you can listen to the inane ramblings of a mentally insane person slowly descending into madness, or just a channel for those looking for more of me, I guess, but don't want to wait 4 months for a new video. I'd show my cash up, but fucking cunt. You can also find my bunker, also known as Rumble. Other than that, you can follow me on Kick.
You what? No.
Listen, alright, I get it. With all the gambling, mentally challenged minorities, and this nigga.
You gonna be on my stream, I don't give a fuck. Fake ID, good.
don't like teenage girls?
I do. After watching that shit, I'm about to go repent. My nigga, I'm about to go pray.
Listen, it was a case of statistics. Either I compete with these niggas or take my chances with the unholy trinity of brainwide self. Jokes aside, Kick is just more laid back from my understanding and less daunting in comparison to Twitch. Like seriously, what is this? But regardless, I've started streaming. So pull up. I could be live right now. You never know. Well, that's probably enough for today. Yeah. Have a good day. I was thinking, you should subscribe. I'm trying to make it to 100K before the end of the year, so I can flex on all my peers and brag to all the brownskins and snow bunnies. So go on down and subscribe. It's Christmas. Where's your Christmas spirit? Go on, do it. No? No, you won't? Well, I wasn't asking. This wasn't a conversation. It was an order. Do it. Knock knock. Thanks for watching the video. Just checking in to ask if you'd be willing to subscribe to my Patreon. Okay, calm. Jokes aside, just here to tell you that I have a Patreon. As most of you know, I don't make any money off this channel. Essentially making me broke, but I don't have to. As for the small price of £12 a month, yes, only 12.
Brother, this guy stinks!
I know 12 is pretty steep, but hear me out. Behind the scenes footage, process videos, director's commentary, unreleased videos, access to all my scripts, and early access to all my videos 2 days before they get dropped. I can't speak.
Oh, bro.
And early access to all my videos 2 days before they drop on this channel. But yeah, I go over 4 hours worth of content on Patreon, and it'll only grow as you guys continue to support me. And also, don't feel like you need to donate. Just you guys subscribing, liking, and watching my videos is enough. Well, no, it's not, but I kind of have to say that. But yeah, it's optional. But it would really help if you pledged. But again, no pressure. Also, subscribe. I'm trying to make it to 10K before the end of the year. Okay, that's it. See ya. An ending that is still open-ended enough to warrant a fucking hell. I almost got that. Are the best of the tech jack. Oh my fucking god. To the point where their basic foundations are unrecognizable. I need to rewrite this again. To the point of comics don't make it past the 4th issue before turning to dust. Of comics don't make it past the 4th issue before turning to dust. Bro, this is so hard to say. Oh my god, bro, I can't be asked. But it's essentially the key to humanity. The next panel we see Cobra talking to The next panel we see Cobra stalking Daniel as he gets moved from the hospital to Haiti. Fucking Jesus Lord, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. God. Daniel. Oh god. Oh Jesus. This is all so tiresome. The start of issue. Oh my god. It's over. It's literally over. Jesus Christ, man. It's fucking done. All tanked beyond recovery upon issues. All tanked beyond recovery. All tanked beyond recovery. All tanked beyond recovery upon issue 6. And even worse. All tanked beyond recovery upon issue 6. And even worse upon his. And even worse upon his. Fuck. And even worse upon the departure of his creator. And even worse fuck. And even worse upon the departure of his creator. Fuck. God damn it. And even fuck it. I'm gonna think. I can't. I've got a lot of time. And even worse upon the departure of his creator. Fuck. And even. Should I say and? And even worse upon the departure of his creator. And even worse upon the departure of his creator. God. Leaving it to its unsung fate. Leaving it to its unsung fate Leaving it to its unsung fate to fade into irrelevancy. Just becoming another one of Kirkman's. Just becoming another one of his Just becoming another one of his. Okay, I haven't got a lot of time. just becoming another one of his forgotten projects.